I'm really excited to talk to you today about hybrid multi-cloud cost optimization. I spent last week in Barcelona at a Gartner event, and it was made very apparent in that session that looking ahead into 2023, we're not really going to see the same reduction in unit cost when we look at cloud computing, right? Historically, we've seen the price of storage, the price of compute decrease as the competitive landscape, of course, between the major vendors means that they're vying for business. But with the geopolitical situation, with the economy as it is today, Gartner are predicting an increase in 2023 for cloud spend. And so that makes optimizing what you're doing with cloud really, really more important and top of the agenda for many organizations. So my name's Jeremy Chaplin. I have a long background in cloud financial management, well before the term FinOps was coined. Worked in a number of spaces, vendors, of course, Flexera, but also in the partner space, taking both tooling and consultancy to market. Very much for me, it's about helping organizations realize their cloud strategy. And of course, part of that is being efficient and optimal and getting business value out of the cloud spend. Now, today's session, I'm actually going to do a live demo. I'm not sure quite why I agreed to do that. Hopefully the tech will stand up and work for us. So it's not really a slideshow that I'm going to share with you. But before we start that, I'm going to take you through hopefully something that you're familiar with, which is the FinOps lifecycle. Those of you who are maybe members of or know of the FinOps Foundation, this is the lifecycle, the methodology, if you will, for doing effectively cloud financial management and FinOps. But Flexera has a slightly different kind of view of this. So I'll take you through this, and then show you in the platform what that looks like. So really, like most things, the key to success here is about being informed. It's about having visibility of what you're spending and an understanding of that as it relates to your business. So that informed stage is super important. And here at Flexera, we can do that for all clouds. So of course, AWS is a big focus for us, but really any spend, AWS China, Azure, Google, Alibaba, Oracle Cloud, really whatever you have. But also it doesn't have to be just cloud cost. We can give you a fully loaded total cost of ownership view. If you were to put down labor costs or on-prem costs or private cloud costs, software licensing and so on, that can be included in the platform as well. And we want to obviously present that total cost of ownership view. So we have to do a degree of normalization. Currency conversion is of course, a common one when we're dealing with so many different vendors. The process then is about allocating that, getting those costs allocated to different dimensions, if you will. What the purpose of the FinOps process is to get ownership of those costs. And obviously, to own them, you want to understand and recognize that they are your costs related to the workloads that you're supporting. Getting this part right is, super critical, okay? The next parts of the life cycle, being able to budget, being able to forecast, will only happen accurately if you've done that allocation piece right. Yeah? If you're forecasting on the wrong thing or planning budgets on the wrong numbers, you're not going to get ownership of those costs. People will not be bought in with a lack of accuracy. So once we've done that, we're looking then at optimization. And there really are only two levers that we can pull here. The cost element is, of course, down to the usage, what I'm using, and the rate I'm paying. And so we can only really influence those two. We produce, of course, a set of recommendations, much like you'll have out of Trusted Advisor and the other native capabilities. But what we do is a little bit different in that we contextualize that. So a recommendation to switch something on or make something bigger or to commit a certain amount of compute for a period of time, you're not going to do those things if you don't know the business context. And that's why the informed stage is critical to that decision-making and optimization process. The second thing that we do a little bit differently then is into the operate stage around the automation of those events. How do we get engineers to take action on spend recommendations? And that's by making the path to doing that a path of least resistance, right? put those recommendations into Jira or ServiceNow or whatever the change management process is that already exists in your organization, rather than forcing an engineer to log into yet another tool. I've tried it, they won't do it, so we'll get it there. The other part, of course, is then measuring and monitoring for success, using KPIs to track that, and ultimately, if we can, unit economics, and that is looking at your cloud spend from a business dimension, cost per customer served, cost per transaction, because when you look at it from that lens, you're likely to make better decisions, okay, rather than from a technical perspective. So let's have a look and see if I can get the tech to work, and we'll switch over to hopefully my device, and we'll have a look through that life cycle. So the first part, as I mentioned, was, of course, getting spend into the platform. We will support, as most organizations would, the 3 major vendors, okay? That's not going to be uncommon. But as I said to you, our objective here is a total cost of ownership view that we would achieve by our common bill ingestion interface. And you'll see here some of the different clouds, different costs that we can ingest. As I said, non-Western regions, Ali Cloud, Oracle, integrations with Cube costs so that you can see your Kubernetes spend alongside the other infrastructure and costs that you have in the platform. And then right at the top there, common bill ingestion. If it's not on the list, then we have this mechanism of ingesting it. Some customers are doing labor, software license costs, other costs of running their IT organization that they want to distribute and allocate for a fully loaded view of cost. Once we've got those costs in the platform, of course, I talked about a little bit of a degree of kind of normalization, and we're able to apply adjustments to the costs in the platform. That may be as simple as removing tax because you don't have tax included in all of the bills that you're ingesting. It could be currency conversion. And we can do that for any currency. We can do it automatically so that a different exchange rate is applied month by month so that you don't need to worry about that from a reporting perspective. If we then look at dashboarding, obviously we've got the costs into the platform, and everything we're trying to do here is from a multi-cloud perspective. You'll see the broad range again of costs that we've got in our demo environment here. That could be the cloud vendors, it could be shared costs and fixed costs that we've ingested by the common bill ingestion interface. We also have no limit here to the amount of data that you can store and retrieve. So a lot of kind of the decision-making processes here are based on a historical trend data. Really important, of course, for budgeting and forecasting, and of course for financial reporting and a historical look back. As I mentioned, however, the real value is in getting that business context. That might be based on tags, metadata that you've put in the cloud vendor space, and of course we'll ingest those, we'll normalize those tags so that you can use them in the Flexera platform. But what is more interesting is our rule-based dimensions. And this enables you to effectively define a logical view of your cloud spend. You could allocate costs from a particular AWS account in a particular region with a certain tag to a particular chargeback code, and you can build those rules in the platform. But where the real value comes is actually you can bring in external metadata. So if you have information from a CMDB or an IT financial management system or chargeback system with your chargeback codes, you can bring that data in and complement your tagging strategy to give you additional visibility of your spend. Now that can be really, really powerful. If anybody in the audience has tried to manage tags in the cloud, you'll understand how challenging that can be, and using this mechanism can make it easier using external systems to provide that view. The other thing worth mentioning about rule-based dimensions is that they're also time-based. So the allocation of cost can be different month by month. Nobody's organization stands still, right? There's a change in ownership, a change in resources, and so that allocation and the history of cost can be retained. Now, the other logical grouping that we have of spend, we refer to as billing centers. And so this is similar to what we've described, rule-based dimensions. However, they're really buckets of cost. Okay, here we've done it by different functions. And it can be a multi-tiered hierarchy of your spend. So under engineering, we have different development teams and so on. Now, the value of allocating costs like this is actually these buckets, these billing centers, are role-based access control boundaries. So I might be a member of purely of the engineering team and only see the spend relevant to the workloads that I'm running. Not only that, however, but the recommendations for savings are also filtered down. So as an engineering manager, I would log in, I would see the costs relevant to the workloads that I own or have responsibility for, and I would also then see the rate and usage reduction recommendations that we talked about presented just for the things that I'm responsible for. And it's really about, when you're dealing with millions of dollars of spend, getting the right information to the right people. Again, really critical in being successful here. We produce a range of optimization recommendations for rate and usage reduction. And the differentiator for us here is that they're actually open source. So we have a catalog of over 150 best practice policies that will produce recommendations around rate and usage reduction, of course, for cost optimization, but also security, operational and governance best practices, governing your tagging strategy, for example, and producing recommendations aligned to security and CIS, internet security best practices. So those recommendations, they can be customized. You might have one policy that produces right-sizing recommendations that's different in dev than it would be in your production environments, right? Your tolerance of CPU and memory thresholds may well be different between those different environments, and so you can customize that using that capability. But the other thing about it being open source, of course, is that it's very simple to build new requirements. Here at AWS reInvent, we expect a number of announcements for new services, new capabilities, and we will be able to, with a degree of agility, support those very quickly. Our own customers are building their policies, we're building new policies all of the time, and it means that we can support those services as they come out very, very rapidly. The other thing that I was going to share with you then was being able to view those and see them in the context of the billing center that you're in. So focusing my recommendations purely for my engineering teams and so on. But also the automation aspects are very important. So cloud financial management at scale is challenging at the best of times. A degree of automation is needed to enable you to do that at scale without building out a FinOps function and continuing to add more staff and resources to that organization. And so the way that we do that is either via full automation, so you can have a policy that would produce recommendations, say, to delete unused volumes. You could do that fully automated, so that it actually went and deleted the volumes without any interaction. You could do it by approval workflow, so that an email was generated, you get a message to say, hey, this infrastructure is unused, how do you want to deal with that? Or you could go into the platform and actually make those changes yourself. You don't necessarily need access to the AWS or the cloud console in order to deliver those capabilities. Lastly, as I said, easing the path to getting engineers to take action is really important. And so if you want to do an integration with an existing tool, a ServiceNow, a Jira, whatever your business processes are based around, that can be achieved as well. So apologies here for the technical challenge. I will be available afterwards for any questions. We also have a booth, the number is 2520, over in that direction, where we'll be happy to have a conversation with you. There's also a Flexera workshop around FinOps, cost and performance management, and software lifecycle and license management. The number is PRT016, and that's at 11 a.m. on Thursday. Thank you ever so much for your time and attention, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon.